Alive and Well STL is a presentation of the St. Louis Regional Health Commission with the first decade review of health status report to build a healthier St. Louis, and RareGem Productions. Power up with the positive. Learn more at OneRareGem.com. That's OneRaregem.com.
Support for Alive and Well STL comes from Beyond Housing, helps entire communities become better places to live. Learn more at beyondhousing.org.
The Regional Health Commission works in partnership with regional health sector advocates and stakeholders to improve healthcare access, reduce health disparities, and improve health outcomes for the uninsured and the underinsured in St. Louis City and County.
Alive and Well STL with Bethany Johnson-Javois, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network.
Today we're talking about life and living with HIV AIDS.
Again, it gets back to talking about sex. We don't talk about the fact that when I meet you, Bethany, your life didn't start when I met you, right? You've got this whole history behind you. When I sleep with you, in effect, I'm sleeping with everybody that you have slept with in your past. And I haven't checked that out. I don't care how much you love them. I'm sleeping with everybody you've slept with in your past. Do we really give that any kind of thought?
Today, we will be talking about this disease and the way that HIV AIDS, the affected population, and the larger community have evolved over the last 2 decades. We'll be right back.
RareGem Productions, proudly presenting, promoting, and producing positive programs.
So let's start off. Pastor and Cheryl, please, as your introduction, share with us, what does it mean to you to be alive and well in STL?
For me, alive and well in STL is that I have access to health care. I can enroll in insurance programs, and I can use prevention opposed to just being sick and then getting care. I can be preventive. I can play with my dogs. That's the best of all. And I can look out across Forest Park and see the sun come up.
Well, Bethany, for me, what it means to be alive and well is to live abundantly. That's a scriptural reference, but it is an all-encompassing reference. It means that I have my optimal health. It means that I have my optimal wealth. It means that my health encompasses more than my physical activity, but my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health. To live and alive and well is to live my best self. I think that's all I want to say about it.
I wish I'd said that.
And you've said enough. Thank you for sharing. That's a beautiful vision of health for you and for our community.
Alive and Well STL.
Good morning, St. Louis. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Bethany Johnson, CEO of the St. Louis Integrated Health Network and host of Alive and Well STL, sponsored by the St. Louis Regional Health Commission. Today in the studio, I'm excited to be speaking with Cheryl Oliver, Executive Director of St. Louis Effort for AIDS, and Reverend Traci Blackmon, Pastor of Christ the King United Church of Christ. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a recent report released by the St. Louis Regional Health Commission, which is a 10-year look back at the changes in our community's health. And one of the topics that we want to highlight on the show this morning is the topic of HIV AIDS. We know sometimes that conversation can spread like wildfire throughout our congregation, and it's so important that when people trust you in areas of their lives, that sacred space, and how to form informal networks that work for people. I want to get your reaction, both of you, to something that I've learned recently. First, according to the CDC, men having sex with men are more severely affected by HIV than any other group in America. The second thing I learned that I had a response to was the definition of monogamy shifting, especially in younger generations. Now, my little editorial is Hollywood and the media are really helping with this, but there's a term now called serial monogamy. And it means the custom or practice of having one mate at a time. So where monogamy was, I'm committed. I'm committed to the person in front of me as long as I am until the next person in front of me is there, and then I'm committed. What does this mean now that we have these different terms? Generations are thinking about things differently, but we tend to have the same concept from 1980. It's not working now, and it's hard to communicate to a different generation. What's your reaction to that? What do we do about that?
I would love you to start the answer here, because one of the things that is true of our population, the population that we are most commonly talking to, is that they haven't even been able to get married legally. So I think that's been a huge part of why there's been so much promiscuity in the gay community, because what are the things that they can do? We have a harder time, but I think even, frankly, serial monogamy is a step forward for our community, because at least they're being monogamous. There's been so much promiscuity in the gay community.
I had a different reaction to that term. I don't think that that's a new trend. I think that monogamy has always been serial, but we've attached marriage to it. So if you're married to this one person and you're faithful throughout that marriage, we called it monogamy. But if you're divorced and you married somebody else, then you would have a sexual relationship with that person. I think what's really changed in our society is that marriage is not as important as it used to be. And so you have people who enter long-term relationships or short-term relationships and never entertain the idea of getting married. And so when they end this relationship and start another relationship, we call it serial. But commitment is still there in that relationship. Does that make sense? You know, so when I think of the phrase serial monogamy, I have to address the power of definition. Because when we do things in the conventional way, then we call them something else, but it's the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
You're still being committed and involved with one person at a time. But outside of the institution of marriage, and I don't mean marriage in the legal term as much as I mean in the covenantal term. Marriage as a sacred covenant between two people that says, I promise to be faithful to you and you promise to be faithful to me. As that decreases, then you have shorter terms of these relationships between people. Again, it gets back to talking about sex. We don't talk about the fact that when I meet you, Bethany, your life didn't start when I met you, right? You've got this whole history behind you. When I sleep with you, in effect, I'm sleeping with everybody that you have slept with in your past. And I haven't checked that out. I don't care how much you love them. I'm sleeping with everybody you've slept with in your past. Do we really give that any kind of thought?
It's a good point. And what I thought about that was important about defining words and defining terms is, particularly when you're in ministry or when you're a servant giving a social service, either way, you have to understand first and then be understood.
Yes.
And so if we, particularly looking at the statistics of how many men having sex with men, that's where the prevalence is lying a lot. And that's where we're seeing in our churches a bit of denial that this is happening. And those are our loved ones, our cousins, our sons that we know that are singing in the choir, that are ministering, but not in this area of their lives being ministered to, because we don't want to see that. And in the secrecy of that happening, while the statistics are flashing, letting us know it's happening, we are missing a way to speak to that mental, emotional, physical need.
Absolutely.
And the fear is festering. So just having an open mind and an open way to engage with people, whether your value system is there or not, whether your doctrine even meets with that expectation, when God gives you the mind to minister to someone, you minister
Yes.
and you figure out a way to make that work. You take the data and you take the Holy Spirit and you put both together. You don't need to choose one or the other.
Yes. And in heterosexual relationships, we have to look at this notion that we really have cultivated a generation for whom the big thing to avoid is having a baby. You don't want to get pregnant. You can take a pill and avoid pregnancy, but that does nothing for sexually transmitted infections. Absolutely nothing. If we don't talk about sex in safe places with people who are qualified to talk about sex, we end up in these situations. The two people I have referred this year are under 21.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the new HIV diagnoses are in youth 13 to 24. And most of the new AIDS diagnoses are in adults 50 and older. And going to the older population, they don't need to worry so much about getting pregnant, so they think, I don't need to have safe sex. And in the younger population, I think that, again, there's that sense of, well, I can just take a pill.
So you're speaking to me, and it makes me think right away. My reaction is our youth ministries have to be more than basketball and plays, that we have to do more than shut-ins and sleepovers only, that we need to really intervene in that age group in the city of St. Louis, in our region around this topic. One more reaction I'd like to get from you. I was talking with someone the other day who said that suicide would be a better option than knowing their HIV status and having to tell the person or people they've been engaged with that they could be the culprit or the person that infected them. What do you say to this person who would rather live in silence and doesn't feel the responsibility to need to share that with others?
It is frightening and isolating. What I would say is we actually had somebody come in very recently that fits this. They're young. They were tested and they were positive. And they said, I'm just going to kill myself. I can't do this. The treatment counseling that we have is very, very good, and all of the people who are trained to work with people who get tested positive, that's part of what they talk to them about. And one of the very first important messages they get is, you don't have to do this alone. You don't. First of all, we're going to get, and I can't say enough good about the case managers, we're going to get you connected with somebody who understands what you need. You're going to get connected with a physician. You're going to get on medications. You're going to have resources. If you don't have any money, we're also going to take a look at your housing and your transportation and your nutrition. You do not have to do this alone. Now, separate from their family, they may feel like they can't reach out to their family, but they won't have to do it alone. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. And this particular person that got tested that said they'd rather kill themselves, we actually had somebody from Places for People that came over and got together with them before they left the building. We would not let them leave the building. So they had a case manager, they had the testing counselor, they had someone who understood mental health, and they were taken care of before they ever left the building. The fear is almost more in what they don't know than in what they do know. We can only get past that by educating.
Reaction. As we wrap up, I'd like to give us and our audience a sense of hope and optimism. What are you both most proud of in this fight? And what is it that we have to look forward to in our community as we do battle difficult things? We don't just survive, we thrive. And we're blessed above measure regardless of that circumstance. What's the hope that you can convey to our listeners today?
I'm hopeful when I think of the man that's in my life that was diagnosed with HIV in 1986 and is still living and thriving, fully engaged in life. Does he have some bad days? He does, but we all do. I'm hopeful when I see the advances that have been made in medications that make that possible. I'm hopeful when I see opportunities in venues like this one and like mentor groups that are being formed all over where people feel liberated to be their true self. I'm hopeful when I meet other clergy that are not afraid to address where people are living and to love them where they are living. Those things make me hopeful and assure me that we can thrive and not just live.
I'm hopeful because I think that St. Louis is really a remarkable city in a lot of ways. And we have some model programs that are reaching out and making very, very good progress with people who are predominantly living with HIV AIDS. And so I'm very hopeful that the more people understand, the more people who get tested and know their status, the more people who can get into care and on treatment, the more likely that we can have zero new infections because of that risk reduction, that we can really have far fewer AIDS-related deaths. This is the National HIV Strategy, not just what we do. And that we can reduce the discrimination. I am very hopeful. I also would love to say that as we look at what we do in the community, and the health community particularly, if we could do a cultural shift of some kind, so that the testing is routine as opposed to risk. If we made routine testing, then people wouldn't have to have the stigma. They'd just get the treatment and care they need. I'm proud of St. Louis in a lot of ways. I'm really proud.
Cheryl, that reminds me, I hosted a sister summit for a few years, and the topic was sexual health and sexual prevention. And I remember the first year, I have a fairly large group of teenage girls in my church. And I had testers there, and I was tested first, and many people got tested. But all of my teenage girls went together to get tested. And some of their parents were outraged that they were getting this test done. You know, you think they're having sex? Pastor, what are you going to do about this? They think they're having sex. And I realized immediately that they were doing it together so that no one had to do it alone.
Yep.
And so maybe there was only one girl that was sexually active, but they made a pact among themselves that we're going to go together so that this person doesn't have to go and can know. even though we know that we are not because we haven't been having sex. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I think that's wonderful.
It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
So you reminded me of that when you said that.
Anything else you want to share in closing?
Thank you for this opportunity and for doing the difficult topics. We appreciate it.
I agree. And it's just really been a pleasure. I'm going to get to know you better.
I would love that.
Okay.
Alive and Well, STL. Thank you for joining us today. For resources available, go to aliveandwellstl.com. If you have more questions about the program, need help, or want to connect, please call the message box at 314-333-8369. The Regional Health Commission with Chief Executive Officer Robert Friend Jr. committed to providing a detailed review of change over the past decade in 14 leading health indicators for the city and county of St. Louis. The first decade review of health status report, an update to building a healthier St. Louis. Discover the narrative, the data, and celebrate the progress already made to improve healthcare access and reduce health disparities in our region. Learn more at stlrhc.org. Alive and Well STL is another positive production of RareGem Productions. Thanks for listening.